Welcome back to another episode of Talk It Up with Taylor. I'm sure you've noticed from the title screen already, but this time we are finally doing a guest interview. Hello everybody. Okay, so as you heard, we are doing an interview this time, and I just want to preface, it is super long. We got into it. Alan Shulman is the guest on this podcast. Know him back from the Michigan State days, but we went on a whole rant. So this is about 44 minutes worth of talking about the mindset and perspectives, things we've talked about before on Talk It Up, and things that we will be talking about a lot more in the coming episodes. So fasten your seatbelts and enjoy. All right, welcome, Alan Shulman. You are finally here for the 8th episode of Talk It Up with Taylor. We have been talking throughout the past week on exactly what we wanted to talk about. And one of the days, we had a 40-minute conversation just brainstorming different ideas. Tell me why you wanted to be on this podcast.
Throughout, also, Taylor, thank you so much for having me. I would say throughout college and from the time I met you, I was always very impressed by you, by the way your mind works, by your work ethic, and also our mutual interests, in sports and sort of people's mindsets and how people think and why life is the way it is. And so obviously being able to talk to someone over a podcast where two minds can sort of brainstorm and talk about, different topics and why things are the way they are, obviously be incredibly exciting and a great opportunity to engage your audience and get them thinking about the things we're talking about, and also obviously for our own benefit, because we both want to have these kinds of conversations and because they're very enlightening and fulfilling, and it's a great chance to bond, but also just really engage on these topics that we both care so much about.
I know, I was going to say, we both went to Michigan State together, so it's been like a few years since we were able to catch up on everything going on in our lives. Then we sat down, we talked about it, and there was just so much to talk about. We were like, all right, we need to bring you on here so we can have everyone else listen to this conversation. But in one of the things that you were saying, when you listen to all the episodes in like one day, you're like, I finished it all. Here's my thoughts. I think about this stuff a lot, and a lot of the things you talk about get me frustrated. What are some of those topics that you can share with the other people that you heard me talk about that you're like, that made me mad?
Where to start? I would say there's an overall frustration, I guess, that I have in terms of how, I don't say people present themselves, but in terms of how reticent people are to really be truthful about themselves and to be open with people. I think there's a fine line between being too open and maybe rushing it in some circumstances. But I think generally there's such a, you walk down the street, you see someone, they say, how's it going? You say, how's it going? And there's really, even if you know the person, you like the person, there's almost nothing, like that's it. It's a very surface level conversation. And I've worked in various offices and such where my feeling was, well, why are you, how's it going is probably one of my pet peeve statements, just because for me, I don't know what it means. What is it? Like, it could be anything. And so for me, I always like to ask people, how are you? Now that might be, it's basically the same thing as how's it going, but to me, it seems a bit more personal. Like if I ask you, how are you? I feel like you're much more likely to give me some kind of, you don't have to spill your whole life story, but you're more likely to be more honest than if I say, how's it going? Because the only answer you could possibly provide to how's it going is good, So I would say that's probably the main topic, just in terms of how people's minds work and how they sort of hide within themselves. And I think there's such a fear of, being vulnerable, of people seeing you. But when you're not willing to do that, you're also not able to connect. And I think we have this dearth of connection in society where there's a lot of, cultural differences, background differences. And so people aren't able to really understand each other. And as a result, a lot of people feel very lonely. A lot of people feel very isolated. Obviously, the pandemic, we don't have to talk about that. Obviously, that contributed significantly to that.
Yeah.
But really, it's just you have to be willing to present yourself the way you are and be willing to be confident in yourself that there will be people who don't accept you, but there will be people who love you for who you are. And I think it's really important to put on your genuine face because that'll make you feel better. And then it'll also lead to more meaningful connections with people who like you for who you are. You don't have to put on a face.
I like that. I like everything you said. You didn't just say, hey, people have trouble connecting, but here are the reasons behind it. And I feel like every single time I talk to a new person, just out of habit, or I don't even know, subconsciously, I go, okay, why are they the way they are? Why are they reacting or responding in the manner that they're using? Why are they using these certain hand motions? Why are they using these certain expressions? And for me, it's like, when I'm happy, obviously I laugh. When I'm sad, it's kind of scary, but I laugh. When I'm angry, there's like a hysterical laugh, like a ha ha ha. When I'm uncomfortable, I laugh. When I'm confused, I laugh. And so if you don't know me as a person, and even if you do know me as a person, I feel like sometimes as individuals, we automatically assume that other people know where we're coming from. And like you said, there's so many different perspectives and so many different backgrounds of each person that create these perspectives that kind of make it difficult to understand why people react or behave the way that they do.
Mm-hmm. No, I mean, you're absolutely right. It's incredibly, there's a fine line you have to walk, and it's hard to find that fine line. There are times where you go to one extreme where, you're not really talkative at all, and then not you specifically, but people in general. And then other times where you go to the other extreme. And so, for me, at least, it's been very important to try to find that fine line where I'm a very talkative person, but it's just how to seed spotlight, like how to share the energy of a conversation, how to be present, even when you're not talking, how to be present and sort of contribute to a conversation without dominating it. And that's definitely something that's still a work in progress.
It's always a work in progress. Every single day, I'm like, how can we improve on this? Oh, you're going back a little. Let's get back out of it.
Yes. No, it's a challenge.
A challenge for sure. Okay, I want to touch on your background real quick. You have so many different sides to your background, not only in how you grew up, but what you were doing for a little while. And I think you said you're shifting gears a little bit.
Eventually. Mm-hmm.
Eventually. So we'll hold off on that part a little bit,
Sure.
but tell me about your upbringing, why you are the person why you are the person that you are.
Sure. So it's definitely funky. My whole family immigrated in 1991 from the Soviet Union. They were escaping, obviously, the fall of the Soviet Union in 91, but also the horrific conditions in which many people lived, or most people in the Soviet Union lived. And being Jewish, there were a lot of there's a lot of anti-Semitism, a lot of persecution of Jews in the Soviet Union, and so a lot of throughout history there were openings, and many people left. Especially the Jewish population fled to Israel, fled to other parts of Europe, fled to obviously the United States. My family was lucky enough to be able to escape in 91 before the fall of the Soviet Union, and they ended up in Michigan. How that happened, God knows. It's the typical, they knew someone in Michigan, they told them to come, and they went to Michigan. So I was born in Ann Arbor in 1998. I moved to DC when I was 4. I spent 6 years here with my mother. Then I moved to New York when I was 10, spent 7 years there. And then my family decided to move back to my grandparents, who stayed in Michigan. And so we moved back to Michigan in 2014, where I finished high school. Then I graduated from lovely Michigan State University into a pandemic. Background is definitely interesting in that my family speaks good English. They wanted to be acclimated into the United States, but not fully. They're sort of that we're part of society, but we're not really fully interested in all the aspects of American culture. So sort of there is a general frowning upon the American way of life, the American mindset, really. It's, do what makes you happy, you know, take care of your mental well-being. And they're like, what is all this stuff? You know, just go do what you got to do and forget about everything else. You know, there's sort of that go-getter mentality that you and I talk about. That's very common among immigrant families, where nothing else matters. You need to compete. You need to beat everyone around you, and that's it. Nothing else matters. And it's not like there's nothing to that. Obviously, it's very important to be competitive. It's important to want to win, to succeed, and all these other things. But it can't be at the expense of your own well-being, living life. And so that's something that I really had to learn. No one taught me how to do that. Everyone in my family is very stuck in that mindset, and they don't know how to enjoy their surroundings really consistently. And so that's obviously something that I had to learn. And then obviously, you know, also being around different cities and different communities. I was in DC and New York that are very, very diverse, you know, so many different people and cultures and foods. And it was just absolutely fantastic. I didn't know it until I left, how much that diversity was so important. I ended up in Michigan. Now, Michigan isn't New York in its diversity. There's definitely diverse communities, but there are pockets of them. And so I ended up, for the first time in my life, at 16 years old, in a majority white school. I had never gone to a majority white school until then. All of a sudden I was getting hit with, you know, Holocaust jokes and, you know, and oven jokes about, you know, and so it was completely unexpected, you know, in terms of, I was so used to being around communities that sort of understood each other, and there was sort of a foundational understanding of one another that didn't exist. And so it was really a culture shock for me. So again, there was sort of that adjusting to different cities, adjusting to the American way of life, but also how different the American way of life is in different states. So there's a lot to go through there. And that's definitely something that's a work in progress in terms of figuring out how to best balance my competitive side, which I certainly do have, but also my sort of take a step back, relax, and learn how to enjoy the things around you. And that's a really tough, again, fine line to walk. I always talk about balance. That's a really important balance to walk. And my family is on one extreme, but I have to be careful not to go to the other extreme, because that's also not beneficial. So you have to find that sort of happy medium.
No, okay. Wow. That was a lot. And I'm glad you just said all of that. Enjoying life and trying to find how to walk that fine line, like you talk about. It is a very fine line, because like you said, if you go a little bit to one side, you almost have to go to that side. If you go to the other, you have to go to that side. You went through so much when just growing up. You moved around a lot. You met all these different communities. You saw these different perspectives. You had that culture shock of, people are saying these things that are not okay to say. And I have not been used to anyone saying this before, because in the other communities I was part in, there was more acceptance. There was more of that understanding, because there was more diversity. You got thrown into more of a white majority school, and now there's Holocaust jokes being thrown around. You're like, well, that's not okay. How do we go about this and try to come out of it? How do we face maybe not these fears, but how do we face these challenges that are kind of hurting the world? So throughout all of the challenges and moving around and different things you've seen just growing up, not even where you're at now, how have you been able to learn to overcome those challenges? You said you're learning every day.
Therapy is an absolute blessing. I think having that sort of, it's difficult to be fully open with people in your everyday life, just because you don't want to burden them. You don't want to, you know, everyone has their own situations, and at least for me, I feel bad, like, oh, I don't want to burden them today because of XYZ. And so I think that going to therapy, which I have been now for 2+ years, has been really a godsend. I think it's absolutely fantastic. My therapist and I get along amazing. Technically, her title is life coach, but really, it's been so helpful for me. I don't feel bad when I go on 40-minute rants. No shame, because, you know, that's the job. That's the point of the session. And so it's helpful for me to be able to talk things through. And we're at the point we're in a relationship where she'll just tell me, just be quiet. Like, what are you talking about? Like, it's nonsense. You know, it's nonsense. She's sort of been able to, at this point in our interactions, be able to really snap me out of it when I need to be, and sort of guide me in the right direction, and also like reaffirm what I'm saying, but also question it at times. And so I think it's been really helpful to get her perspective when, you know, I get stuck in my own, you know, thoughts and mindset. I'm like, oh, what I'm doing is totally right. Everyone else is an idiot. And like, duh, I have it down, and they don't. And so sometimes it's nice to have that. Well, actually, you don't know what you're talking about. You don't know what you're doing. And you need to think about that before you get into the whole everyone else is wrong mindset. So it's very helpful to get that other perspective, to be able to be open and vulnerable and talk through these things, because that's just, there's so much going on, and there's constantly different variables. And, you know, I recently moved to DC in January. I guess that's still recent. You know, and starting a new job and living in a new place and being in a new city again, even though I've lived here before, a lot of different variables. And so sometimes you need that sort of, you lose track of other aspects of your life. And so it's very important to have that one place where you can really talk about the combination of variables and factors that are in your life, and be able to feel like you're in a settled, stable place with all these different variables and changing situations. And so having that was just so immensely valuable.
I appreciate you for sharing that, and also helping to break that stigma of going to therapy. I know I talked about wanting to go to therapy. I know you're like, go to therapy, it helps you out. Not only is she holding you accountable, she, I'm not sure, you said it was a woman. Okay, she's holding you accountable. She's like that little angel on your shoulder, helping you, guide you through these different variables. You went through all of these different challenges, and it's kind of hard as the person when you think you're always right all the time. And I'm sure you know people, and I know people who are like, no, this is the way it is. It's my way or the highway. And you're like, well, everyone has their own different walks of life. I'm sure there's no complete right or wrong answer here.
No. 100%.
How do we go about that? And so when you're expressing how you feel and ranting it all out to your therapist, and she's going, hey, actually, you're in the wrong here. When someone's holding you accountable to that level and you trust them, you have that trust in them because you can be vulnerable with them, and they understand it, and they want to help you, and they care about you. And that care about you isn't, no, Alan, you're right, do whatever. You know what? You're right all the time. Go do this. Yep. They care about you in a way that they want to better you.
Absolutely.
When you're out of those therapy sessions, how do you then take how she's holding you accountable? And then when you leave that session, how do you then hold yourself accountable?
Fantastic question. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. I think it's sort of at the beginning, I really didn't. And then slowly but surely, it happened more and more often. I think it's a mindset. I know it's a mindset. For me, at least, it's a mindset. It's, how do I think about situations when I'm in them? For example, completely silly, waking up in the morning. Don't lay in bed for 30 minutes because, you know, it gets the day off on the wrong foot. Because you're sort of lazy.
Nice to do, though.
Yes, yeah. On occasion, it's fine, but sort of it's a mindset, you know. And when we were talking about it, she said, you're sort of laying there, you're not really getting your day started, so you're getting off on the wrong foot, and then it's sort of almost slow motion from there, because you have to get into it. Your brain's not really there. You're sort of letting yourself be lazy, and so do I still lay in bed? Yes. Do I do it for a short amount of time now? Yes. So I think it's baby steps. You can't expect to solve everything, to understand everything, to be pitch perfect, you know, like right away, or even, you know, within a year or 2 years. Like, it's an ongoing process. And I think what's really important, ties back to everybody, is you always growing. Like, you're never done growing. You can't be like, oh, I'm 52 years old and now I'm perfect and I don't want to change anything, or I'm flawed the way I am, and deal with it. I think, you know, and this is me thinking about my family, which, you know, kind of frowns upon this whole mental health, taking care of yourself, growth thing or aspect of life. And so for me, seeing how they were how stubborn they are, and how they say, oh, well, now I'm this age and I can't change because I am the way I am. And for me, that really showed me that's not who I want to be. I want to be someone who, I don't care how old I am. I'm 23. If I'm 33, 43, like I constantly want to be like, you know what? There's still aspects of my mindset, personality, whatever it is that need to be fine-tuned, or let's say fixed, improved. And so it's really important to have that mindset, because otherwise you get stuck, you allow yourself to be in a cycle of that you're either damaging yourself or you're damaging the people around you. And that becomes cyclical. And then you pass that down, and then it becomes a whole cycle of trauma and discomfort and a lack of willingness to improve and to feel better. So I think it's so important to break the cycle and to be willing to help yourself and improve, because when you help yourself, the people around you feel better too.
Yes, 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 yes. Okay. How you feel internally expresses outward, or let me rephrase that. How you feel on the inside shows on the outside. So it's like vibes, right? People go, oh, I can tell their vibe. And people are like, vibes. That's such a
energy you're putting out. Yeah.
Yeah, such a younger generation thing. But when you think about vibes, it's the vibration, the vibrational frequency, the energy that people talk about more so in our generation, the younger generations now, where they're seeing how to better the mindset. They're trying to improve themselves and break the cycle like you were talking about. I was talking to my aunt and she was like, wow, Taylor, I'm surprised that you're learning and talking about all this stuff. It's taken me so long where I'm just now talking about it. I've talking to my parents and, you know, looking at their mindsets, and just like how you were talking to your parents, your family, you were like, they're stubborn. They think, well, this is the way I am now. There's no changing it. I'm settled in my ways. And you talked about it being almost a lazy mindset. Why do you think that is the way it is?
It's difficult to change. It's difficult to evolve. It's difficult. You don't want to, because that assumes, because for you have to have the confidence to admit something's wrong without then it's snowballing into everything's wrong. There's again that fine line, because I know plenty of people who, if they admit something's wrong, then it snowballs and it's, oh, then I'm wrong with this, and then I'm wrong about that, and then all of a sudden it's an existential crisis. It can't be that. You know, you have to be able to admit flaws and faults and mistakes without questioning your whole being. And so for me, that was something that I was very willing to do. Am I stubborn? I'm very stubborn, but I think it's something that you have to gradually. Even my therapist sometimes tells me, like, this progress is taking too slow, or you need to be working on this faster. Yes, absolutely, it happens, and I think it's normal for everyone to do that. You can't expect it to be a magical like switch that you press and all of a sudden everything's fixed. It takes time. It takes years. It takes years. For everyone, it's different. I think for me, what I see in people that really frustrates me, kind of going back to what we were just talking about, is what the energy that you're giving off, you know, the vibes or whatever you want to call them. They're very important, and it's very clear. And I think sometimes situationally you end up at times where people irrationally behave completely irrationally. They lash out for some unknown reason. You know, they snap. You know, they say something mean, or you know, they have that period of time where you're like, whoa, like what just happened there? And I've been around a lot of people who lash out, who sort of, you know, something's off. They feel off. Something's not right, whether it's in the moment, whether it's a lifelong issue, and they'll lash out at you. And that's something that's a major pet peeve, because you're taking something that you yourself, I don't know, need to work on, or something that you're not being very open about, or whatever the situation may be, a situation that you yourself can solve, but instead you're taking out your frustrations and your negative energy, your negativity on other people. And why? You know, it's a very toxic thing to do. It's a very just mean thing to do. It's just not a nice thing to do to people. And so being around people like that, seeing how they were unable to manage their emotions, really showed me that's not who I want to be. I have bad days, I have bad moods. It's normal for everyone. I will not, you know, excuse me being mean to someone because, you know, oh, because I had this going on or that going on. There's never an excuse drag people down with you when you're not feeling well. That's on you to either be open with people about what's going on or to take steps to make yourself feel better.
Like I said, the whole excuse thing, I just recently heard, I was watching, these like self-help videos with Bob Proctor and, law of vibration and law of frequency and law of attraction, all that good stuff. And he's like, when you excuse yourself from doing something, you're giving yourself permission then to do the thing. So right. I like how you went into that whole, like, okay, don't excuse yourself to do these things. You have to hold yourself accountable. And then instead of displacing your anger or negative emotions on someone else, understand it yourself and come out of it. When we are talking about different environments or situations that we're in, I know you and I were talking about different work settings or just different settings when we indulge ourselves in different communities or groups. And we said it's interesting to see how your energy changes when you're in these different environments. Sometimes you're able to fully express who you are as a person, and other times you feel more drained to be yourself as a person because you're like, I can't fully express myself to these types of people or because of the environment that I'm in.
No, you're absolutely right. And it's definitely an issue that I've had. I'm often called polarizing. The polarization exclusively means that I am often unwilling to put on a face. I'm unwilling to change drastically my personality depending on the environment I'm in. I interned once at a consulting firm, and the guy there told me, one of the employees there told me, Alan, you need to develop a second personality. And I told him, and I was like, hell no, no chance. I looked at him, I was like, absolutely, yes, sir, absolutely. I'll consider that. There was no chance. And it's not happening. So for me, at least, it's how much of yourself can you show in environments. You have to be able to tone it down. And that's something that, being stubborn, I was like, I'm myself and everyone else can take a hike, and you can't have, that's a bit extreme. I think it's important to be comfortable with yourself to the point where you're able to tone it, like turn it down, like turn the volume down, turn the volume up, depending on the environment you are in. Because not everyone can handle, my loud volume, my sort of passion, my brain constantly working and seeking stimulation and observing the things around me. You have to be able to tone it down. And so again, I always talk about balance because it's so important. You can't sway from one extreme to another. And having that as much of balance as you can possibly obtain, where I'm comfortable being myself. And this is something that I've gotten a lot better at over the years, is I'm myself in every situation. It's just sometimes I know when to tone it down depending on the people I'm with, and I know when I can be fully myself. And so that's something that you have to, that's social cues, that's being aware of your surroundings. That's, years of being in very populated areas where people watched and I saw the dynamics and I saw how people talk to one another, react to one another. And that's something that you continue to learn. You're at 20 plus years old, you're not going to be an expert on that. And even at 60 years old, you might not be. So it's a constant evolving and learning, because that's, sounds kind of silly, but that's kind of the fun of life. You're always learning new things. You're always learning new skills, and you always have to adapt, because otherwise you are sort of stuck in the past. You could be stuck in the past and you struggle to evolve with how society is now. And so it's really important to have that growth mindset.
Wow. Okay. Yes. Got to keep growing. Things are constantly changing. Like you said, the world that we're in right now, I just feel like there's so much chaos. There's a lot of hate. There's a lot of people who are mad because boundaries have been crossed because of the hate. And when you're dealing with all of these chaotic factors, that you just have to be like, all right, let's sit down, let's wrap our minds around this. And you almost have to keep pushing through. How do you keep pushing through? How do you set these boundaries while remaining yourself? Like you said, you don't need to change the channel. You just have to turn the volume up or down based on a given situation.
Yeah, that's probably the question which I have not yet, that's the question I have not really yet solved. Just starting my career, being in politics, the excitement for me with politics, and some people, the listeners, are gonna be like, excitement with politics. It's how many avenues it crosses, like how many different topics and areas it touches. You can be interested in politics and be interested in one niche area, or something else, or wherever it is. There's something for everybody, essentially. What's awful about politics is sort of the politicking, sort of the actual process, the dealing with all the self-serving people, and they're so full of themselves and all that. Politics is draining. Politics is exhausting. For me, as someone who politics, you have to have a different face, essentially, or it would be very helpful for you to have that. And that's not me. And so, yeah, for me, it's just finding my niche where I can be comfortable, where I can be myself and do the things I care about without having to conform to everyone else, kind of, not everyone obviously the same, but sort of there's that general approach where I'm not going to show too much of me because I don't want to alienate anyone. And it's important in politics for people to like you. And so I'm going to be this shallow, surface level version of myself. And that's just, and being around people like that in an environment is just not fun. Like, I see what you're doing. I get why you're doing it, but this is just not fun. Like, I need that kind of engagement, that emotional mental stimulation. And when you're around people like that, it's tough. The thing with politics that's appealing is you can work on the things you care about. My organization, I work for Jewish Democrats. We touch on so many different areas. Combating anti-Semitism, something that's very important to me. Supporting gender equality. Where we're doing a lot of work now to reverse the idea, hopefully the undoing of Roe v. Wade. And school shootings. I mean, there's so many different, and shootings in general, there's so many different areas that we cover that are so important. The problem for me on an individual level is there's so many things we're covering. So that's the appeal and the downside. It's completely draining. It's overwhelming. One, I went to several protests for abortion rights, and now we have to go to protests for gun rights because, they're shooting. And this constant, it's appealing in that you feel like you're having some kind of minimal impact on the powers that be and on the issues that you care about. But there's only so much of you, So how do you balance out, for me at least, how do I balance out all these issues, all these negative things that are happening, and still enjoy my life? It's difficult. That's why a lot of people in politics there's a lot of burnout. People are upset. People are angry. There's a lot of negative emotions. And so, again, it's piling on unresolved issues from before, not going to therapy, not really working on yourself. You pile on all these things on top of it. Then you're around these people who you're just like, you're a lost cause. It's hard to be around you. It's a difficult environment to be in. There's certainly good. Now I'm just focusing on the mindset part of it, but it's a challenge. It's really a challenge. And that's definitely something that I'm actively working on, how to leave it at the door, the politics at the door when I'm home and when I'm in my personal life. But it's hard because it's always around you. There's always something happening.
All right. You're one person. I'm one person. You talk about how as individuals, we each have so much to put up with. You're on the politics side of things. I'm on the media news side of things. Mm-hmm. And I feel like when people hear both, they're like, ugh.
Yeah. Yep.
The news, the media, chaos, politics, chaos. And so there is so much that people don't like about that side. And I feel like when you are the person on that side and you're explaining it to other people, there's so much. And even for you to pinpoint one thing to talk about starts this whole snowball of other things because you're like, it's so connected
together. Mm-hmm.
Yes. And so finding that balance of this is who I am as a person, and this is who I am as a person trying to get things done with my work, with my passion. It's so difficult to find that balance. Yep. And you said that you're still learning how to leave the politics at the door when you come home, mm-hmm. how to figure out who you are as an individual outside of that whole bubble of things. Mm-hmm. I even started noticing, for me, when I got home and I would talk to people, close friends, close family, I'd be like, oh, work, blah, 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 blah. I learned this at work. I saw this at work. This was mm-hmm. work, blah, blah, work, work. Mm-hmm. And then started thinking to myself, and I was like, hold on, Taylor.
Yep. Yep.
What else are we talking about? What else is our mind bringing awareness to and focusing on? Where are we putting our energy into? And I was like, as much as it's good, like you and I talked about, the immigrant families, the families who come here for that better life, but they're so work driven. It's like, okay, when do you pump the brakes a little bit and take a step back, zoom out and be like, I'm not all about work.
Yeah.
I should find that happiness and joy in this world that we're all searching for.
I mean, it consumes your life. I mean, it's so easy now hanging around political people and being around, folks I work with, and sort of people are so consumed with it. And I could see why. It's easy to get consumed by it. There's so many things, like I said, going on. But you just, at least for me, like, I don't want to constantly be thinking about work. I don't want to be talking about work. My friend group that I have here that are fantastic, we never talk about politics. We never talk about any of those things. Does that mean we don't care? Of course not. Like, everyone's paying attention. People know what's going on, but we avoid it because we know that's not good for the overall vibe, the energy of the conversation of the group. And we need to do other things to enjoy life, to avoid all the toxicity and the negativity. So that's definitely those are the people that I've grown to value immensely, are the people who barely ask me, talk about work. Like, no, they know I don't want to do that. And they also know that it would not be good for the overall vibe of sort of what we're doing to talk about the latest school shooting, the latest situation at the Supreme Court, the latest bill that's being passed, the elections. There's always something going on. And if you can't take your mind off of it, you burn out much quicker, and you just struggle with yourself. I can't imagine how many people, who work in politics are, like I said, burnt out, but just depressed, just unhappy, because they never learned. They don't have that growth mindset. Whether that's their own fault or whether that's the fault of their environment, where they learn how to cope. They learn how to balance out, how to leave it at the door. It's a really tough skill. It's really hard to learn. And so for me, it's something that I'm actively trying to learn as fast as I possibly can in order to avoid the burnout that I have referenced several times.
Oh yeah, I feel that. I feel the drainage. Sometimes I'm like, we're definitely becoming burnt out. Let's relax a bit. Let's take a bubble bath. We'll put some Epsom salt in there, light a few candles. You and I were talking about last week how people are so drawn to negativity, how negativity is just such an easy thing to resort to. It's almost like, as much as it makes us uncomfortable talking about it, for some reason, us humans are just drawn to negativity. Like how people bond. When people first meet, sometimes the easiest way for people to bond is over a mutual hatred for someone or something.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I'd like to ask you, I think, as we're wrapping this up now, is what do you think of society, since you have been so involved with it, not through your family, but also through your career, through going to Michigan State as a student, learning over there, and now you are figuring out who you are as an individual person. How do you think society can overcome the negativity and be more humane to each other?
Oof, what a question, Taylor.
We're ended it on a good one.
What a question. Wrapping up here, and here's something I could talk about for hours and hours. Sometimes it's several steps forward, several steps back. I think where we are as a society, 10 years ago, we would never say, "Oh, I'm in therapy," or "Oh, I'm in these spaces where I'm working on myself." That's not something we really talked about even 10 years ago. I taught my little brother who's 9, he's turning 10 in a few weeks.
Happy early birthday.
Thank you. There are a lot more counselors now at his school than I did when I was his age. And makes me feel old, obviously, but there's more of an emphasis in society to make it less taboo, to really emphasize You can grow, you can learn, you can make mistakes. It's okay to be upset. It's okay to have a bad mood, be in a bad mood. It's okay to be upset about this or that. You grow from it, you learn. You can't just wave it off to the side. You have to really embrace it and work on it. Because if you don't, it snowballs and it becomes, that one flaw turns into many more. So I think societally, we're definitely taking good steps in terms of being more open and being more understanding and willing to help, but we're also not doing enough at the same time. It's very gradual. Everything, in our country generally happens very slowly. Progress happens, but it takes time, throughout history, all these, civil rights and voting and all these important aspects and gender equality. Can we safely say we've solved all those issues? No, but we've taken steps. And I think this is a similar situation where you just have to take it. It happens very slowly. And there's steps back. We see, rights sometimes being stripped away. We see, with, I don't want to get too political, but with Roe v. Wade, this is something that's been ingrained for years and years. And all of a sudden, like it might be going away this month, next month. That's something that you constantly have to be aware of. Society is always, up and down. It's very up and down. So you have to see the good. There are good steps being taken. There's progress being made. You need that positivity, but you can't be naive. You have to see. So there's that sort of, you can't be naive and you can't be just overly negative. You have to find that there are good things that are happening that are very important that need to be continued. And there are awful things that are happening that need to be combated and fought. And we need to raise awareness over it. So I think you try to find that commonality, that balance, that awful word that I've been using the whole time, balance, to really keep that even keel mindset where you see the good and you see the bad and you're able to essentially just see both and be able to learn from it and grow from it.
Balance, patience, and progress.
Mm-hmm. Perfect.
There it is.
Mm-hmm.
So I would love to talk to you again about more topics, and you have left me so many more things I can talk about, which is great because it's Talk It Up.
Yes. You got to wait till the ratings come in though before you invite me on again.
There we go.
See if the audience has bought in to my ranting and raving, and then we could see.
I enjoy it, so I hope everyone else enjoys it.
Yeah, I had a great time. I really appreciate you having me on, and you're doing a great job. And I'm thrilled to play a small role in your brand.
Hey, small or big, whatever it may be, your small role is helping me out a lot. I'm sure it's going to help so many other people out a lot. So you're going to have quite a big impact just from this small segment. I don't know. I liked all of it. I don't even know how I'm going to edit this out. So that's a good thing. I believe in you,
Taylor. Or just leave it all in. Who cares?
There you go. There you go.
Thanks,
Last thing, is there anything else you would like to add? Whether that's a piece of advice, something you just want the viewers to think about?
I'll repeat probably for the third, fourth, or fifth time. Be willing to grow. Be willing to understand. Be willing to accept flaws, limitations. No one's perfect. You have to just be able to grow, I think, because like I said, society is very fluid. Things change, situations change, people change. You have to be able to stay the course, be comfortable in yourself, but be willing to fine tune yourself as well. So just don't be afraid to grow. Don't be afraid of change. Don't be afraid to be vulnerable. Be comfortable with who you are. Have that foundation in place, but be willing to constantly improve and grow as time goes on.
Do your best. That's all you can do.
You're right, Taylor.
All right, Alan, thank you so much. I can't wait to have all the viewers hear this. And I can't wait to bring you on again sometime in the future for another Talk It Up.
Sounds good. Thank you, Taylor.
Thank you, Alan. I hope you guys gained as much insight as I did from talking with Alan and sharing those different ideas. As we talked about on Talk It Up, it's hearing people's stories and hearing their perspectives so we can somehow relate it to our own and shift our ways. Anyways, if you want to keep up with Talk It Up, go to talkitupwtaylor.weebly.com. You can go to the updates page for any updates. That's where you can go for the other episodes. And I know we talked about getting this on more platforms like Spotify. Yes, that is still in the works. There are only so many hours in the day, and I get tired. So We'll get there when we get there. I'm thinking in the next couple of weeks. But also, we will have more guests coming on Talk It Up, and I'm excited. So I will see you guys on the next one.